Thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. Of course, the lights are so bright, I have no idea who all is there, but that's probably a pretty good idea. We're here to talk about the issue of gender parity in the C-suite. I'm Joann Lublin, as you heard. I'm the management news editor for the Wall Street Journal. I'm also the author of a book that's coming out in 29 days, but who's counting? Which looks very directly at this issue of gender parity in the C-suite. It's called Earning It, and if you look in your packet for today's conference, you'll find a postcard telling you all about it. I'm very honored to be joined today by Tracey Massey, who's president of Mars Chocolate North America, which means she leads sales and operation for the world's biggest chocolate maker. Jean Oelwang, who is president of Virgin Unite, which is the entrepreneurial foundation of Virgin Group. She's also the former joint CEO of Virgin Mobile Australia. And our third panelist is Gisel Ruiz, who is executive vice president of international human resources for Walmart International, which includes a very tiny number of employees, something like over 1 million. Wish I had $1 for every one of those. Let's start off with question number one, which is, and I'd appreciate each of you answering this in your own point of view, how could businesses more effectively foster gender parity at the executive level? And in particular, which approaches work especially well at your employer? Tracey, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I work for Mars, as you said, which is a privately held company, and one of our big philosophies is development. So even if I just look at my career, 25 years with the same company, they've moved me around a lot to different countries, different functions, different businesses, and it really is those experiences that I think helps prepare you for the C-suite. The more you've seen, the more you've experienced, the more perspective you can have. So the more we can encourage women to do that, because we know, research tells us, that women are less likely to put their names forward. They're less likely to raise their hand. They want to be absolutely sure they can definitely do the job before they do it. So the more we can encourage women and push them to maybe take some chances that they wouldn't normally take, that would be my advice. And it certainly worked for me over the time.
Where did you find the courage?
Well, sometimes somebody pushed me to do it. So, there have been times, this job as an example was never something that I ever wanted to do or knew I could do. And my boss at the time said, look, I think you should do this. And he gave me a nice sharp shove in the back. And it was great. And I think, what I would say is people can always do more than they think they can do. And I mentor women across the organization now, and they can always do more than they think they can do. So a little shove in the back helps sometimes.
Men, of course, tend to think they can do much more than they really can do.
I can't say that. I have a large group of men that work for me. They'd be very upset if I said that.
Gisel?
Yeah, well, at Walmart, I think it starts first with the business case. We have over 260 million customers that flow through our organization every year, and the majority of those customers are women. And then for us, it's about building the best talent. And we believe that companies who try to excel at attracting and developing and empowering women will have a competitive advantage in business. I mean, there's a lot of research out there, much I'm sure that you've included in your book, that shows that having more women in your organization means a more successful organization. So it starts with the business case. Our approach is just very simple. We kind of take a 360 look at the entire initiative. It starts with tone at the top, and that includes our board. We have a very diverse board compared to Fortune 500 companies, and I can tell you from experience, those board members have a genuine interest in our efforts around diversity and inclusion and hold us to account. That and the tone of the top then trickles down to our senior leadership team. So our CEO, Doug McMillan, our 5 segment CEOs are hands-on on the topic, on the initiatives. And then I think companies also need to have formal programs. At Walmart, we have formal programs as well as the tone at the top, which is a bit more informal, leadership presence, those types of things. But the programs is what really starts the momentum, and it starts to actually create change in your organization. And then last but not least, if you believe it's a business imperative you will measure it like you would any business venture. And so we have reporting that goes directly to our CEOs. We hold ourselves accountable to the goals that we set for ourselves.
Good. Jean?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the beautiful things about Virgin is that we have a philosophy around 100% human at work and how you bring your whole self to work. So that immediately sets the right environment and the right framing. And I think the other important thing, we have about 25 businesses in our portfolio, and the ones that are most successful in making sure that women can get to senior leadership roles are the ones that have a deep sense of purpose and a very solid set of values. Because I think that almost transcends everything. So it becomes obvious that of course you need 50% of the world's population and that talent pool in order to deliver to your purpose. And so each CEO in our company really embodies that in a different way. And I agree with the points made about accountability. I think you have to have targets, you have to have accountability, and one of the framings some of our CEOs use within the companies are around attraction, around retention, and then around progression, so that they have programs alongside each one of those.
I wonder for our second question, if you could share a little bit more of your personal story. You alluded a little bit to yours, Tracey, but I'd like to know what particular factors played a key role in your getting to the executive level, and what else are the three of you going to have to do to get to the C-suite?
So I did allude to it, but I'm actually a chemical engineer. That's how I started, a chemical engineer.
Gotcha.
And I started in Mars in manufacturing, moved around into finance, and spent most of my time in finance. And then I moved to the US about 15 years ago.
In finance?
In finance, and my second job in the US was actually to run a factory in South Carolina. So I've moved backwards and forwards between manufacturing, finance, and across our businesses. So we have 6 business segments: pet care, chocolate, food, Symbioscience, and Wrigley, and our drinks business. So my early career was actually in a B2B business where we make office coffee. So just lots of different varied experiences.
But not only that, you were moving from staff roles to line roles, because finance is a staff role, running a factory is a line role, and you weren't sort of pigeonholed in a staff function where many women find themselves stuck.
I think the important thing is that you get those varied experiences, and the most important thing to get to this level is people leadership. So you have to take those roles where you're managing and developing large numbers of people, because that's what you need to do as you get up. If you're really going to develop talent, you have to give back. So I think one of the things that's nice, certainly about Mars, is we get to give back to women in the business and help them just like people helped us. But I do think culture is really important. You know, if you've got a culture that does look after women, does promote women, if I just think about us, in the industry we're in, less than 25% of CPG senior leaders are female. In our business, Mars Chocolate North America, we have 42%.
Of your senior leadership?
Of our senior leadership as women. Because when you promote a culture that you can get there, people see people like them at the top and people have made it, and then you encourage people to do it, it gives everybody a bit more hope and a bit more chance to maybe take a risk. So culture for me is one of the most important things.
And the other half of my question is, what else do you need to prove or do to be a direct report to the CEO?
Deliver my numbers really well for a few years.
Okay.
And honestly, find my successor. Because one of the things that we really hold dear is you cannot move on until you've developed the talent underneath you and there's somebody ready to come through and take your place. So that's really, really critical. Make sure you've got your successor.
Good advice. Gisel?
Yeah. Well, Tracey and I have something in common, and then we're both long-term veterans of working in our companies. So I was a college recruit, and I've been with Walmart 24 years now. You can do the math. And now today, I'm one of approximately 30 executive vice presidents out of an associate population of more than 2 million people. So that's pretty special. And when I think about what was the difference maker and how was it that I was able to make it in such a large company and had the opportunity to do the roles that I've been able to do, I really think a lot of it had to do with, number one, you had to perform in the role that you were in. Regardless of whether or not it was your dream job, you had to perform in the job that you were in. And number two, I had a lot of mentors, but more importantly, I had sponsorship. So people who recognized something in me that maybe I hadn't recognized in myself yet, and were able to give me that push and then advocate for me as I was being considered for roles that might have been a little bit
And were those
unusual.
mostly men or women?
Men.
Your sponsors?
Men. And the other thing that we have in common is that I've done functional roles and P&L roles. I started my career in operations. 16 years ago, I took my first human resource role there in Bentonville, Arkansas at the home office. And since then, I've been doing both operation roles and human resource roles over the course of 24 years. So it's also about being flexible and the company taking chances on skills that they see in you too. So a lot of similarities within the two companies.
And what else do you need to prove or to do to be a direct report to the chief executive?
I think it's a terrific question. At this stage, the pipeline or the number of chairs at the C-suite are
It's
fewer
smaller.
and fewer, right? It's much smaller group. For me, my best advice to women and men is imagine over 24 years how the business has changed. Retail has been completely transformed in the last 10 years or so. So it is about staying curious. It is about continually learning. It is about being flexible. And ensuring that you're demonstrating kind of the current thinking in your space, whatever that is. It could be in healthcare, it could be in retail, it could be in nonprofit, whatever that is. But stay ahead of the change curve.
That's
is
good
my best
advice. Excellent. All right. Hope you've got something left to say that the other two haven't said, Jean. And the third question, we'll start with you and come.
Oh, no, that's great. I mean, just a little bit of background on my career. I started in the telecommunications industry in America, and then I shaped my own business with a partner, and we were starting mobile phone companies around the world for about 18 years, and kind of then dipped in and out of the not-for-profit sector, and then landed in Australia, where I was joint CEO of Virgin Mobile, and then after that became CEO of Virgin Unite for the last 12 years, and then a partner in the Virgin Group, looking after the people and the innovation side. And just recently stepped into more of a strategic role now, where I still work at Unite and the group. But I think if I could maybe share 3 quick stories about some learnings as I went through. I think the first one was probably my very first job. I remember my very first well-meaning mentor gave me 2 books, thinking that they would help me along the way. The first one was The Art of War. And so I thought, oh my gosh, I guess I have to be a warrior now every day when I come into work. And then very soon after that, he gave me The Joy of Cooking, just in case I didn't make it in the war game. And it was great insight into the stories we tell ourselves about females in the workplace. And that was some 30 years ago. And I think for me, I made a decision at that time that I was going to tell my own story, and I was going to be my own person, and I wasn't going to change to fit in what the organization was telling me they wanted me to be. So that was one story. And I think a second one was when I was in Virgin Mobile and I got asked to be joint CEO. I think that was one of the most beautiful experiences, because I was joint CEO with a male counterpart, and we collided in the beginning, and then it was probably one of the most beautiful relationships I've ever had, and I learned so much and he learned so much, and both of us bringing our values to the table. And I think that was a big learning for me about partnership and not confrontation, and how you work in partnership. And probably the third thing is purely conversation. I think being in the CEO post and then moving into the partner role, for me what was most important is to have really open, frank conversations with my colleagues, and to make them feel safe to have those conversations with me. So I think things like unconscious bias are really critical to create that space.
Mm-hmm. All right, so since you just spoke, I'll give you a little break, but we'll start with Gisel for the third question. What specifically are you personally doing to help move more lower-level women into senior management? And I assume your answer is going to be, I mentor them, I sponsor them, but let's be as specific as possible that people in the audience can have some takeaways from.
Maybe I'll describe it in 2 ways. First, there's the pay it forward aspect. I mentioned my career earlier and how special I think my career journey has been at Walmart. So I just feel like I have a responsibility to pay it forward. So I'm doing the things that were done for me, the sponsorship, the mentorship, just as you said. I lead a group I have several mentoring circles. One specifically is a group of Latinas, and I've done that for the last 7 years.
Wow.
Why Latinas? Well, I'm a Latina, and I believe that we need more Latinas in senior leadership roles, so that's my way of contributing back. But let's set that piece aside. Then there's the more pragmatic kind of action that you take. Regardless of your role in any organization, whether you're in finance, operations, human resources, don't take for granted the influence that you can have on change in your organization. So anyone can adopt goals and objectives that help move the needle when it comes to empowering women. So as an example, in my role leading human resources for the international segment, we took a best practice that Canada developed. They developed a women in retail training program, and the purpose of it was to help advance women in operations roles, to help increase the number of female store managers. It was incredibly successful. They increased the number of women in store manager roles by 56% since 2010. So again, a pragmatic approach. Set the goal, talk to all the market HR leads in the 12 markets that we operate in, and said this year we are going to launch women in retail programs, training programs in all of the countries that we operate. That was last year. As of today, we're in all but one country. The program is up and running. And so I give that example to say, don't take for granted the objectives that you set for your organization, regardless of where you work. You set an expectation, you measure against that expectation, and you will move the needle.
And you set the bar higher than people expect.
Absolutely.
All right, Jean, now you've had a chance to recover, and then we'll hear from Tracey.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is whether you're male or female with young people coming up, is making sure you're role modeling the right behaviors and giving them a chance to be who they are and celebrating that and not crushing that. And so I think the second thing would be really being honest with them and being honest about the difficulties and the things that are going to be hard, and so they don't get blindsided, so they really understand what it's like to come up into an organization. And I think the third thing, one of the things that's been so important to me is the community around me. So it's mentors, it's sponsors, but it's also those peers that you can have that really honest conversation with. So I think young people coming up the pipeline, help them build those communities out. Help them make sure that they have those connections that they can go to if they have something they want to chat through. And I think probably the fourth thing, we've had, I think, 24 babies in Virgin Unite over the last decade. And I think it's also working with women to make sure that they have the space and time to just embrace and enjoy motherhood and then come back and be excited about coming back to work. So I think things like, someone coined the phrase returnships, or letting them come back in the time they want to come back in, making sure when they come back that they have the time to still be with their child. So I think it's also looking at job shares. So I think it's also with young women coming through the pipeline, making sure that we give them that right environment and fight for them to have that right environment.
Good. All right, Tracey.
Yeah, so we have programs. Women at Mars is one of our big programs that does a number of different things, gives women opportunities in terms of development, but also gives them an environment where they can talk to each other about what the difficulties are they're facing. The book circles, all sorts of different things. So I go to many of those in lots of different varieties. I also mentor people, and a lot of people just want to know, how did you get here?
Exactly.
That's all they want to know.
What's the secret sauce?
How did you get there? Well, there isn't secret sauce. You just do every job that you do as well as you can do. And my biggest advice to people is do something you love, because if you don't love it, you won't be good at it, because you have to spend way too long at work to be unhappy.
But you also don't want to pigeonhole yourself into one functional area either.
Exactly. But if you think, so there's those pieces of career advice, but then there's just purely being a role model. So I have 3 children. When my daughter has a soccer game at high school, I leave work at 3 o'clock and I go watch a soccer game. And don't underestimate how many people see you do that. Because you can have both. There's absolutely no reason why you can't have a great career and an amazing family. And I think when people see at the top that people do those sorts of things, it becomes then okay. I can remember when I first started work, people would wait until the boss left the office, but nobody would go. I mean, that's just not the environment that you want to create. So if you can do those sorts of things and lead by example, and of course, in our jobs, you do have authority, so use it.
Right.
In a country where only 13% of parents have paid parental leave, we have maternity leave, paternity leave, and even paid adoption leave.
Right.
And you can, when you're in these jobs,
All
you can
three
fight,
of you work
can
for
fight
companies
those
that
sorts
are
of things.
pace setters. We're unfortunately out of time, so I would like you each to take 30 seconds and give one piece of recommendation if you could tell every male CEO and female CEO in this country the one thing that they should do to help achieve gender parity at the senior management level. 30 words or less.
Push women to do more than they think they can do because they'll surprise you every single time.
Okay, Giselle?
Work hard. Women are a scarce commodity and they know their value. So go find them, go develop them.
Okay. Jean?
I would say be an incredibly courageous leadership. Put this at the core part of your organization, in the center of your objectives. Be transparent. Make sure that you are living to the values and the purpose that you set for your organizations.
Excellent. I think these were all wonderful insights, and I appreciate your sharing them so honestly today. Thank you.
Thank you.